Good morning, everyone. Welcome to FPC Radio Live. It is December the 1st. We're in the final month of the year 2022, and tonight we have Thursday Night Football between the New England Patriots and the Buffalo Bills. So, exciting way to start off December, certainly with some implications, playoff implications on the line. Obviously, the Bills look destined to head to the playoffs, while the Patriots are scratching and clawing, John. Last year, the first matchup between these two, we saw the weather become a huge factor, obviously, with the wind gusts and everything like that. And I believe, if I remember correctly, at one point, the Patriots ran the ball 32 straight times. I don't think we're going to see that today.
No, they only threw 3 passes in that game. They won 14-10. And unfortunately for the Patriots, Ian, they didn't play last night because last night here in New England, it felt like last December in Buffalo. It was rainy, it was raw, it was windy, felt like a hurricane was coming through here. So if they could have played on Wednesday night instead of Thursday night, it might have been a recap of last year's game. But the weather should be okay tonight. It'll be cold, a little bit of wind, but not the factor that it was last December at Orchard Park.
No, absolutely not. And obviously, the last game that these two played was just a pure domination from the Bills in the playoffs. I think the Patriots are better than they were, obviously, last year. I think the Bills are still the Bills, and look, this isn't a situation where I look at this and I say the Patriots are overmatched. I mean, the Patriots can win this game. That's not that wouldn't surprise me. I think it's going to take a lot of, I don't want to say perfect play, but you're going to have your A+ game across the board if you're the New England Patriots, i.e. not turning the ball over, probably creating a turnover too. And fortunately for them, Josh Allen is prone to the turnover. And if the Patriots can kind of take advantage of that, especially early, I think they can surprise a few and then again really throw a wrinkle in this division race because coming off a loss to Minnesota, I think we can all come away from that Patriots game, obviously no moral victories, but there's a lot of things to like about that. So you can sit here and play, be hard lined on, well, if you don't win, it's not nothing. It isn't anything to get excited about. Well, I'm not necessarily getting excited about a loss, John, but I can also look and see that there were a lot of positives in that game that we hadn't necessarily seen throughout the entirety of the season, and primarily on offense. They pushed the ball, they moved the ball well. Mac Jones was throwing the ball with authority and confidence. And that's kind of the real big thing with him is like, and maybe it was an injury issue before, but it felt like he wasn't necessarily confident in every throw he made. And that led to some mistakes. I thought he played potentially the best game of his career last week against Minnesota. And if you're a Patriots fan, you're really, really hoping he and the offense starts building off that.
Yeah, obviously they look more like an NFL team on offense in that Thursday night loss at Minnesota. Minnesota's pass defense isn't all that great, so it turned into being a higher scoring game than a lot of people anticipated. Now, Buffalo's defense is better than Minnesota's, but Buffalo's banged up.
They're going to be without Von Miller.
7 starters. Yeah, Von Miller's not playing. Some other starters are out. Dawkins, the tackle, is out on offense. Josh Allen is playing through something with that elbow. It appears that his long passes are just fine. Some of his shorter passes aren't as accurate, leading to some turnovers. So he's not quite right, but he's still, obviously a force on the football field. So, and both teams are playing their third game in 12 days. In Buffalo's case, it's their third road game in 12 days because we remember when they were going to play Cleveland and Buffalo, they had to move the game to Detroit after 6 feet of snow fell in Buffalo. So they went from Buffalo to Detroit, back to Buffalo, back to Detroit. Now they're coming here. So, that's not an easy thing to overcome, 3 road games in 12 days. The Patriots, 3 games in 12 days as well. So here's where we're at when you have Thursday night football. Fortunately, both teams played last Thursday, so it's not a short week for them. The big issue that you look at is since Tom Brady left, and this is always, kind of tough to go at, but since Tom Brady left, the Patriots defense has allowed 25 or more points 16 times. In those games, they're 1-15. Yeah. So they don't generally win shootouts, or they only won 1 shootout in the last 3 years. When Brady was here for 18 years, 18 full seasons, they had 90 such games where the Patriots defense gave up 25 or more points. They were 40-50, which is 44% winning percentage. which is probably the only thing that Brady was never at 70% in.
Yeah.
But that's still remarkable to win 44% of your games when your defense gives up 25 or more points. That's incredible.
Well,
to me, that's another great feather in the cap of Tom Brady.
Well, especially when you consider too. Again, I kind of poke fun at this a lot when it comes up because you see it all the time. Actually, I tweeted this out the other day, and right on cue, someone kind of did exactly what I said it was going to happen. But they'll be like, "Oh, Patrick Mahomes' first 70 games versus Sid Luckman's first 70 games." Yeah, Sid Luckman played in the 40s. Okay, like yes, of course he's going to have more passing yards. I mean, it's getting kind of ridiculous how many times we have to see those comparisons. But getting back to your point, those games were coming. There were times when those games came in the early 2000s when, nowadays it's like 17-point leads we've seen evaporate like nothing in this league. And we see high scoring games and whatnot. So it's like on top of having a pretty impressive winning percentage in those situations, you're also dealing with a handful of those games coming in an era where points weren't at such a premium. Let's put it that way, or at such a, that's not the right word, but you know what I'm saying? Like, points obviously it's a lot easier to move the ball nowadays. And there's no one disputing that except for Chiefs fans who think there's no difference between 2001 and 2018. But the reality of it is there's a huge difference, and there's a lot of data to back that up. So, anyways, yeah, that's something that obviously, you want to, there's two things you want to see from that. One, you don't want to see the team give up 25 or more points. I mean, that's obviously not a sustainably great defense, although I think this Patriots team has been a lot more good than disappointing on the defensive side. But obviously you want to see more of what we saw last week with Mac Jones and this offense, the ability to push the ball and not play too conservatively. And look, we've seen this in the past. Last year against the Cowboys, very similar. They didn't win that game, so he's not going to get credit for obviously a win when they don't win, but that was another example where we're like, wow, okay, this offense can kind of push the ball a bit. And we're going to see what happens here this week, if it was a bit of a mirage or maybe it was just finally a breakthrough on their behalf, because coincidentally or not, it came on Thanksgiving, and we know how Bill Belichick feels about how the season plays out. It's usually you find out about your team around Thanksgiving. And if the Thanksgiving Day game is any indication, I think they're going to be in pretty good shape moving forward.
The only thing is, in their final 6 games, they're playing either elite quarterbacks or at least good quarterbacks, right? You've got Josh Allen twice, you've got Tua once, you've got Joe Burrow once. I mean, so those guys are all MVP candidates. You've got Derek Carr and Kyler Murray, who are on any given Sunday capable of putting up 27, 30 points, right? I mean, they're I wouldn't say they're elite quarterbacks, but they're pretty darn good. So you're going to be facing good quarterbacks for the remainder of the season. And quite frankly, this year, they haven't beaten a good quarterback, right? The ones they faced, they lost to because those guys put points on the board. Can you win a shootout against those types of players? They haven't proven it yet over the last 3 years. I think the only game they won when they allowed more than 25 or more points over the last 3 years was a 30-27 win over the Jets back in 2020, when I think Nick Folk hit a game-winning field goal. So it's just a different vibe. Obviously, you got to try to contain Josh Allen. And you said it earlier, Ian, right on point, create a turnover too. That is a huge factor here, because last 2 times you faced them, they never punted. But if you can create a turnover too, take care of the football on your own, now you really level the playing field.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what the exact numbers are for the Patriots, but at one point this season, they were pretty kind of 50-50 in creating and giving up, the ball. Their turnovers on offense have gotten better the last few weeks. So I think, and defensively, they're a great team creating turnovers. So that's not a surprise. It's the exact opposite, but the same with the Buccaneers. Like, they're about 50-50 with turnovers. They just don't create them on defense, and they don't turn the ball over on offense. So it's kind of funny in that sense. But for the Patriots, you have to create turnovers. That's how you're going to beat this Buffalo team. And again, it's a tough schedule, no doubt about it. But there's opportunity in this tough schedule because of who they're playing. You mentioned the Bills twice. That's a huge thing. You have another rematch against Miami, and you have another matchup against the Jets. So I'm sorry, not the Jets. You have another matchup against Miami. So there's opportunity to gain some ground against the better teams in this division. But it's got to start tonight.
Yeah, because you lose this game, you're 6-6. Buffalo's 9-3, and you still have to go up to Buffalo to end the season. You do have Miami coming here, but you've got Cincinnati team that's playing really well coming in here as well. And then you've got this 2-game road trip coming up where you play Arizona on a Monday and then the Raiders on a Sunday. And they're going to stay out there, which is a smart move on their part. Look, to get to the postseason, they have to win those 2 games. I don't think they can avoid losing to Arizona and the Raiders, 2 teams that are, I wouldn't say mailing it in at this point, but neither one of those teams is a playoff team. You've got to sweep that 2-game road trip. Try to steal the game tonight. Now you could be looking at 9-5 going down the stretch. Now you're right in play with 2 of the final 3 at home against Miami and Cincinnati, teams that I think are better than you, but teams that you certainly can beat in Foxborough, especially if you get some weather issues and you kind of derail those teams' passing games.
Mm-hmm. I mean, look, the reality of it is this team can afford to maybe lose one more game if they want to win and make it into playoffs. And again, it's a tall order because, this isn't an easy schedule. And look, this isn't, again, it's so hard to manage expectations with this team because again, there's still the aura of Brady lurking. And if you listen to some of the things that have been coming out lately, I don't know if that's necessarily going to go away, at least anytime soon, or at the very least, the speculation, so to speak, about his potential return. Although, John, I do believe that I think it was more of a kind of like what I was doing, kind of looking at the logistics of it, kind of looking at, okay, if you're Tom Brady and you're going to play next year, what are you looking for? Well, you're looking for a well-coached team with a very good defense and financial flexibility. That's exactly what the Patriots have. Now, again, this all depends on most importantly, Mac Jones. I mean, if Mac Jones shows significant improvement down the stretch, they make the playoffs, it's not a chance in the world they're going to dump him for a couple of years of Tom Brady. And look, I'm not necessarily going to blame him, even though you could argue that maybe Brady is still the better quarterback. You're obviously going with the younger option, but it becomes more realistic, or at least the discussion I think heats up a little bit if Mac struggles down the stretch and this team kind of is in limbo. You know what I mean? Like I wouldn't be surprised. Like I'm not sitting here saying like they're gonna commit to Mac for 4 years if he's not getting it done. Like I think the wins record means a lot to Bill Belichick, and he understands that time is running out. Just look, he's 70 years old. Like like you can't coach forever, and I think as much as he's probably going to coach until he literally can't coach anymore. I don't know if he wants to top Don Shula, and if it comes down to, well, you have a team right now that is potentially a quarterback away from being a significant playoff contender. Now, that quarterback away could just be the natural development of Mac Jones. Let me be clear on that. Not saying it has to be a replacement quarterback, but you can deduce from what you see the rest of this year and say, okay, is he capable of elevating his game? And look, the coaches know a lot more than any of us because they see him at practice every day, and it's not just about evaluating his game tape. So they have a much better idea about what they're getting. And based on, the quarterbacks, so to speak, that Belichick has drafted, whether or not they're stars or just backups in this league, like they're pretty good at evaluating quarterbacks and knowing what their abilities are. I know people joke about it, but look across the landscape of the league. I mean, you got Jacoby Brissett, unfortunately, who's sitting down. Jimmy Garoppolo. You have Kevin O'Connell coaching. He was a Patriots quarterback draft pick. They know how to find these guys. Maybe obviously not. They're not drafting Tom Brady every year, but when you can draft a quarterback, say like Matt Castle, who, is he a perennial starter? No, but he lasted like 15 years in this league, which is incredible.
He's a good analyst right now, and let's not forget handsome Cliff Kingsbury. I mean, I know we always like to make fun of him, but he's the head coach of the Arizona Cardinals and actually got them to the playoffs last year, which is always a minor miracle in Arizona. I mean, their history isn't all that great, especially the last 40 years. But yeah, without question, I mean, how sexy would this be? Tom Brady comes back to the Patriots, right? And the Jets go get Aaron Rodgers. I mean, that was part of the article in The Athletic by Jeff Howe. Well, could you picture that?
Well, we missed out on Brady Favre for that 1 year. Remember that?
Right.
Because 2008, 2008,
exactly.
it was like, oh man, we're going to get Brady and Favre twice. And
Brady Rodgers twice a year, New York, Boston, Foxborough, Belichick, who, loves Rodgers. Like, could you picture the 2 weeks leading up to those games? Like how, and Belichick's he's a bigger fan of Rodgers than I am, I think, for God's sakes. And, just going on about him, and he's got the greatest quarterback in his locker room again. I mean, God, and then you got Josh Allen in Buffalo and Tua in Miami with that high-powered offense. That division would be nuts. Oh, my Lord, that would be sensational.
Well,
let's make it happen.
Yeah. Look, and this is, and I kind of feel bad, and, because I got my Mac Jones jersey hanging up in my closet right now, but, this isn't, this isn't like, oh my God, we got to get rid of Mac Jones. No, it's, and I've said this from the moment. I want to take credit for this, John, by the way, for bringing
I'll
this
give you
up
credit,
first.
and I don't even know what it is.
Yeah.
I'll give you credit.
Well, you're contractually obligated to do so.
That's true. That's true. I understand the rules.
But I think I mentioned this, weeks ago? Just it floated the idea.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, again, just looking at it, and I keep saying this, and I've said it on Twitter before, looking at it in a vacuum, and I don't think that there's this, and what the talking point would be if this starts to kind of gain a little steam. And again, I think we'll know one way or the other over the next few weeks, because if the Patriots struggle and obviously Mac Jones struggles, then I think it becomes more of a reality, where right now I think the reality of it happening is probably very, very, very low. However, I do not believe that there's going to be some ego clash where it's going to prevent this from happening. I don't think that at all. Like, again, I never really bought into this severe split between Brady and Belichick that the local Boston media and certainly the national media really tried to drum up. And I've said it before on the show. I think it was just a result of working for 20 years together. Look, I mean, marriages barely last 20 years, let alone, a working relationship where there's...
Brady didn't. His marriage didn't last
clearly
15 years,
yeah,
right?
His
so
marriage
he
with Belichick
on.
lasted longer. So,
Belichick is more attractive than Giselle. Things do happen.
Well, he's got a boat and everything. Well, I'm sure Giselle's got some things too. So
true. He's got islands. He doesn't fool around.
I was going to say
he has literal islands.
Yeah, you buy the boat to take it to her island, but
right.
No, look, I don't think it's an absurd statement to make. Again, there's a lot of things that have to kind of play out over the next month and a half to really make it more of a legitimate thing. And look, Brady's got to play next year. We have no guarantee that that's going to happen. Although I just don't right now. I don't see him walking away after this season. You know what I mean?
No.
Unless Tampa goes on a miracle run where maybe they go and win the Super Bowl, maybe. But I see him. He's still too good. I mean, that's the thing. I know people are jumping on it. They'll sit here and point out, they'll say he's washed, this, that, and the other. But I'm like, all right, well, clearly you're not watching the film with any sort of objectivity. It's either you're not watching the film, you're reading the box score, or you're just dead set and listening to guys like Nick Wright or, these other knuckleheads that go on TV and just spout off narratives and all that stuff. The reality of it is he's still a really good quarterback. And, you're talking about a guy at 45 who's third in the league in passing, has thrown 12 touchdowns, only 2 interceptions. And, again, it would be a shock to me, I think. Well, I don't know, maybe not a shock. I don't want to say a shock that a 46-year-old decides to retire. But that's kind of where I'm feeling right now, because I just don't feel like he's done. And this divorce kind of, I don't know, maybe it's fool's gold from my perspective, because I kind of feel like it does open the door for him to play longer. And much like I think Belichick wants to, pass Shula, I mean, I think Brady thinks, well, look, the longer I play, the more just unprecedented it's going to be. Like we talk about, Patrick Mahomes is breaking all these records. He's on pace for this, that, and the other, blah, 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 blah. At his current pace, John, he would have to play at this level without a drop-off for like 15 more years.
Right.
To reach where Brady's numbers are now. So, this is why I tell people all the time, there's no such thing as on GOAT pace at this point, okay? Especially not 5 years into your career. We'll talk in 2030 or 2035 if he's still playing, and certainly at a high level. But right now it's more or less like, okay, just enjoy what you're doing in this open offense era of football, and we'll judge based on what we see down the line and kind of adjust. Because I know, again, I mentioned it before, we talk about, they're constantly bringing up, Tom Brady's first 5 years, Mahomes' first 5 years, or Peyton Manning's first 5 years. And it's like, it's silly to compare the two, especially when you're looking at just raw numbers, because the game has changed so much in those 20 years. So, put up Patrick Mahomes next to Justin Herbert and guys like maybe you go back as far as Matt Stafford. You know what I mean? A guy that was kind of doing a lot of the things that Mahomes is doing now, i.e., the fastest to 30,000 yards or the fastest to 10,000. You know what I mean? Like everyone's, getting all up in arms about, oh my God, he's the fastest to do this, the fastest to do that. Well, of course, because it's the nature of the game. You know what I mean?
Well, are they not including his first season though, when he didn't play except for the final game of the season? Yeah. So the thing with Mahomes, and I love Mahomes, I think he's sensational. I think he's the face of the league. I think the league's in good hands with a player like that, and a lot of other great young quarterbacks like Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, Herbert, Lamar Jackson, all of them. Big Justin Fields fan as well. Mm-hmm. But I think with Mahomes, he went to the perfect situation, Ian. They traded up to get him. They were a playoff team the year before he showed up with a really good pro at quarterback in Alex Smith, who embraced him, mentored him. He sat for a year, then he was ready to play. He's playing for the best offensive mind in the sport, right? And Andy Reid. I mean, we can all agree on that that's the best play designer and play caller in the sport. He's been doing it for 20 plus years. If we think, Belichick's the best defensive mind in the sport, then Andy Reid's the best offensive mind, and go at it, right? So he walked into a great situation, and more power to him because he's followed through on it. But, again, every situation is different. I mean, Matt Stafford went to a joke of a franchise. They were 0-16 the year before he played. They couldn't even protect the guy. Peyton Manning went to a terrible franchise, and within his second year had them at 13-3 in the playoffs. Aaron Rodgers sat for 3 years. So, if you want to talk about his first 5 years, it's only his first 2 years as a starter. So everything is different in that situation. I think Mahomes went to a really, really good situation. And look, he's taking advantage of it. Just look at Tua this year, right? First 2 years, good quarterback, won some games. Now he's got a really good offensive coach. You had Tyreek Hill. Now he's an MVP candidate. The quarterback needs help.
Well, and look, and that's like, we're not trying to, and surprise, surprise, I am a Patrick Mahomes fan. I know it doesn't come across that way. And I certainly, the way I view it is like, I'm trying to preserve history, John. That's my motivation. And it's not.
You're the gatekeeper.
I am. I try to be. And like, and this is the reason why, because it's like, first of all, I have, there's no insecurity, quote unquote, on my behalf as being a Patriots or Buccaneers supporter in this case, because Tom Brady's in Tampa right now. That doesn't bother me. Like the guy that I, champion, so to speak, has beaten Patrick Mahomes, and certainly his resume is, again, it doesn't even get touched. But the idea that, I got into a back and forth with someone the other day saying like, we hear the same things over and over. Oh, we've never seen this before. What he's doing is unprecedented. And I'm like, not really. I mean, we get quarterbacks all the time that come in and are the fastest to throw X amount of yards or throw X amount of touchdowns. And look, that's natural. That's not unprecedented. Certainly now, based on how the game has evolved to greatly favor the offense, of course, these records are going to be set right now. Like I said, Matt Stafford was the guy that was doing all that before Patrick Mahomes. So is it impressive? Absolutely. Is it the greatest start in NFL history? Absolutely not. And certainly is not this, far away and above the best quarterback in the league. I mean, people, again, keep going back to, compare this to that, 20 years apart. Well, that doesn't mean anything to me. Okay. It doesn't. Like, people say that, and it's like, okay, so you're manipulating the numbers to try to prove your point. Great. Good for you. Let's stack up some of these younger quarterbacks over the same time period that Mahomes has been in there. And yeah, he's probably at the top of the list on most, if not all, these categories. But guys like Justin Herbert, guys like other younger quarterbacks that have a relatively same period. I mean, some of them have been in the league less than Mahomes, others have not. The numbers aren't dissimilar. Like, he's not like greatly outpacing like his contemporaries. And on top of that, you got the two old guys up until this year that were clearly better than him, So it's like this idea of like, he's just, lapping the field, or like, we've never seen this before. It's all hyperbole, and it's just over the top hyperbole.
It's not Wayne Gretzky, scoring 212 points and the next guy,
or Bobby Orr winning like the,
right.
being the, the league's leading scorer 3 times as a defenseman. Like,
Right. Yeah. I mean, the ridiculous stuff. And Gretzky having more assists than anybody else at points in a given season, or Will Chamberlain averaging 50 and the next guy was averaging 30. I mean, no, it's not. And again, let me bring him a quarterback that I compare Mahomes a lot to, and that's Brett Favre. I think Mahomes is going to trend to be better because he is more careful with the football than Brett Favre was. Brett Favre won an MVP in his 4th, 5th, and 6th season as a starter. That's damn impressive, right? I mean,
went to back-to-back Super Bowls.
Back-to-back Super Bowls, won one. I mean, he was clearly the best quarterback in football at that point, right? Because I think Montana had already retired, and Young was right there with him.
Yeah,
Elway was still there.
Old.
Yeah, Elway and Marino were getting older, but they were still. Elway and Marino at that point were almost kind of like Brady and Rodgers. Like, don't sleep on these guys.
Yeah.
They're still awesome, but they're maybe a little older than these other guys that are playing at a high level. So yeah. So, I mean, in fact, I think it was 95, 96, and 97, which was his 4th, 5th, and 6th year as a starter. And before that, he already established himself as an MVP candidate. So, and again, he never got back to the Super Bowl after the age of like 28. Mm-hmm. So, it's not. Look at Aaron Rodgers, right? He wins a Super Bowl at the age of 27. I assume he's going to go back several times. He hasn't. He goes back there to win the MVP award 4 times, but not to play in the game.
Well,
so, I mean, that's
why
I
said before, it's like the odds that Patrick Mahomes will go to 0 more Super Bowls in his career versus, some of these guys are like, oh, yeah, he's easily going to win 4 or 5. Like, what? No. Like, you can't make that. That's not how this sport works. And I understand fan excitement and getting, really into it. But, again, I think it does do a great disservice to what we've seen, the many years of history in this league where, to your point, again, Brett Favre was very similar play style. Now, like you said, at the end of the day, at the end of their careers, Mahomes could end up being better. That's fine. Maybe
I think so. Yeah.
Maybe we look at the interception splits and say, yeah, well, Mahomes is definitely better at taking care of the ball, but he's not that much better. You know what I mean? This isn't Aaron Rodgers take care of the ball. This is like, again, I don't want to focus on turnover where they plays because they don't count as interceptions, but he's had some very fortunate, interception luck over his career. So, and at the end of the day, it's not like he's keeping his interceptions to single digits. I mean, Chiefs fans are all over Josh Allen for, oh my God, he's thrown the most interceptions in the league. Well, Patrick Mahomes has thrown 8. That's 3 less. Like, it's not that much different. And, for those out there that are like, oh, he does this more, no one makes throws like Patrick Mahomes. No, that's just BS. Okay. Like, let's stop with this. Like I think that's what gets under people's skin the most because you get up there, you're trying to watch a great game and really it's entertaining football to watch the Chiefs play. Who doesn't think that? But when you get up there and you're like, oh man, this is great. This reminds me of Brett Favre and the Packers. And then it's like the commentators are up there. It's like, oh my God, we've never seen this before. It's like, no, that's a lie. And what it's doing is it's dumbing down the sport for the fringe fans. So do I blame them for believing that no one else has done this before? No, because what do they know? They listen to the commentators or the analyst. I use my quotation marks because I think we're getting far and away from analytics and more so just sensationalism. We see it all the time. Like we're, turn on Good Morning Football and you have Kyle Brandt looking like he's going to have a stroke because he's doing his angry runs. And it's like, okay, great. Awesome. I get it. But it's like, it's fun. Good Morning Football is fun. I understand the concept of the show. I'm not knocking on that, but you go to some of these other shows and it's just it's more that it's like the Emmanuel Achos of the world now, where it's just, trying to build their own personal brand and, say things that are outrageous and just hope that it comes true. And then, you know what I mean? It's just an endless cycle of nonsense. But, if we're going to break down the X's and O's, I mean, well, if you're really breaking down the X's and O's, you're going to sit there and say, these great things that Patrick Mahomes are doing, let's compare them to some of these other quarterbacks in years past. And then you go side by side. Okay, Brett Favre, Patrick Mahomes. That's how you reach and that's how you teach the history of the game. You don't get up there and give these empty blanket statements. Oh, no one's ever done this before. Especially when we see these things happen week to week. It's like the whole no-look pass thing. We've talked about it before. It's like, okay, guys, like we've obviously seen that before. He has not invented the no-look pass. I mean, we've seen it happen year after year after year after year. Or it's like, his throw style. It's like, great. If you want to see people throw like that, go watch baseball. I mean, that's the unique thing about it. Okay, So he throws a football like he's a infielder, like he was in baseball. His dad was a professional baseball player. So great, good for him. It's not this like he didn't invent this throwing style. So it's like I laugh at this sensationalism and this hyperbole that's just completely over the top, especially when it comes to Patrick Mahomes. But I don't even know what my point was, to be honest.
Well, you have to rant against Patrick Mahomes every show. I understand.
No,
No, but I get your point.
The focal point. He becomes the focal point of it, but it's more or less just the appreciate the history of the game and just don't dismiss it, because we're getting
Jay Cutler threw the ball a lot like that.
Yeah.
Jeff George had as good a natural talent. Burt Jones. I mean, I know he's even before your time. I mean, he was at his
Bill
best in the mid to late 70s. And right there with him. I mean, just watch highlights of Burt Jones from like 1975 through 1978. He looked like an alien because he looked like a modern quarterback playing with, in a time where guys didn't do that. I mean, a freakish quarterback. Yeah, I mean, so many of these. Dan Marino. I mean, God. I mean, who had better arm talent than Dan Marino? I mean, Dan Marino could throw every pass imaginable and throw it from every angle, just like Patrick Mahomes. So. Yeah, that's all well and good. It's no different than like if we're judging actors. Like we both love Daniel Day-Lewis, but before Daniel Day-Lewis, there was Robert De Niro, and before Robert De Niro, there was Marlon Brando. I mean, these guys are all, like related to each other. Like they all take a little bit from each other. It's not like, my God, I can't believe Daniel Day-Lewis. He's incredible. I've never seen an actor immerse himself in a role quite like Daniel Day-Lewis. Yeah, I saw De Niro do it a dozen times. I saw Brando do it a dozen times. So they're all great, so let's be fair here.
Yeah, and that's really what it is, because I know it always comes back to like usually Brady versus Mahomes, but there's a lot more to it. Like I'm a big Peyton Manning fan. Obviously, I think, I've been watching football for, look, I'm 36 years old. I've probably been watching since the early 90s, but I'll give, look, at 5 years old, I'm not analyzing football, so I'm not going to sit here and say like, oh yeah.
I think you were. I think
maybe
you were.
I was.
I think you were.
Well, 1991, it was a good time.
But
in my life.
Like the first time you really started to watch and comprehend football, obviously as you watch it more and more, you get to analyze it more. But at that point, the quarterbacks were, we're talking say mid 90s, right? You're 10 years old.
Yeah,
and
easily.
Okay, Brett Favre, Steve Young, Troy Aikman, John Elway, Dan Marino. Those are probably like the first five that come to mind. Those are the guys you're watching.
Obviously. Well, because
being a Patriots fan, yeah. And again, he's the best quarterback the Patriots ever had till Mr. Brady showed up. So, and sometimes people forget that Bledsoe made this franchise relevant in 1993. He and Bill Parcells, and Robert Kraft, those three guys saved the franchise. I mean, that thing would have been gone long ago if not for those three guys doing their magic. So, so that's what
unfortunately, Bill Parcells almost torpedoed it on his way out. So that's why he doesn't get the.
That's my guy, though.
I like Bill Parcells, but again, I can't forgive him for having his mind in a completely different place before that Super Bowl. That's a mark on his legacy. Sure, absolutely.
He's King Lear.
Oh,
he really.
I
mean,
absolutely.
He's Shakespearean. I mean, he's like always looking for his next spot. But I got to interview him a couple times. He's sensational. Well, he's one of my favorite interviews I ever did, and one of the best coaches ever. And I like those types of coaches who are like that commanding presence on the sideline, who are like the general. That's why I like Mike Vrabel so much. Like Mike Vrabel's one of the few coaches in the NFL doesn't have like a place sheet stuck in front of his nose. Like he's coaching the team. Yeah, and I think Gerard Mayo is going to be. I think Gerard Mayo is going to be that guy too, whether it's here or somewhere else. I can see that. Ron Rivera is a guy that does that too. Like these big tough linebackers who I don't think any players are going to be intimidated. They're going to be intimidated by these guys, but they coach the team. They're not just. I'm so sick of the Matt LaFleurs who just walk up and down the sideline with the Cheesecake Factory menu plastered in their face, and when the team is on defense, they're trying to pump up the crowd. Go coach the team. Don't pump up the crowd.
Well, it's like how many times have we seen like when the Patriots, back in the day were on offense and Belichick just has this the Patriots will score a touchdown and Belichick is like crouched down in like a 3-point stance talking to defense and he'll look over his shoulder. Yeah. Okay, they scored. All right, this is what we have. You know what I mean?
You could do that when you had Brady.
Yeah, exactly.
You take care of the offense, so I'm gonna go coach the defense. It's there's nothing wrong with that. That's good coaching, right? Understand that you get the greatest ever and let him go ahead and do his thing. So yeah, no, I love those coaches that, and I actually am somewhat of a fan. I mean, some politics will drive you nuts. I think Jack Del Rio was a pretty good coach. He got Jacksonville to the playoffs a couple times, got the Raiders to the playoffs, made them competitive. I think he's a pretty darn good coach. I don't think he's an elite level coach, but I like those, former players that understand the game and are trying to coach the entire team. I mean, Dan Campbell kind of does that, but sometimes he loses sight of what he has to do. But
yeah.
I like those. And Parcells was obviously better than all these guys, but he had kind of that Vince Lombardi command on the sideline where you knew who was in charge. But he let his coordinators coordinate, and that's a good thing.
And again, he was involved in the right areas of the football team.
Yes.
You have to organize your time to perfection when it comes to being a head coach in the NFL. Yep. And doing the right things or putting the right amount of effort into certain areas. But basically, what I was got off track a little bit, but the point was, like, I've watched a lot of quarterbacks play, and I've always been attracted to the position just because, look, I grew up and I was a goalie in hockey, so there's a lot of similarities to an individual and a team sport. Like, they're both team sports, but there's a lot of individualism when it comes to playing position, just like a pitcher in baseball too. You're on the mound, you're doing your thing. So I always was just enamored with how the game was played from that perspective, because I look at it like, man, they see the game, they watch the game. That's how I played goalie. I wasn't necessarily involved in the offense, obviously, but I'm sitting in the back, dictating how things are supposed to be going in the defensive zone and just watching the game unfold from that perspective. And I think it's very similar to how a quarterback does it. So naturally, I would gravitate towards the quarterback position. So I've seen a lot of quarterback play. So I'm not just basing it off blind fandom of Tom Brady or this, that, and the other. But, like, when I sit there and say, guys, you got to pump the brakes a little bit on this Mahomes stuff, because we're completely forgetting about, and it's happening very quickly, John. Like, and we're seeing this a little bit from, I have some connections to the whole Hall of Fame process. So, like, we're seeing that type of dynamic kind of leak into that room, where it's like you're getting a much younger generation that is completely forgetting about not just history, but very recent history in the NFL. And I feel like the more and more we go down this road with how the game is covered, like, I'm hard pressed to find anything that's worth a damn to watch, because there's no analytics. There's no, and I'm not talking about like, I'm talking about analyzing the game from an X's and O's standpoint. Like, it's just sensationalism. It's narrative. It's, his this, that, and the other is Kyler Murray and Patrick Peterson, that little rift. And, that's not football analysis. So it cheapens how we view it. So now, again, you get people up there like Nick Wright will sit there and say, Kelsey is the greatest tight end of all time. Well, if you ignore half the position, maybe you have the case. But, like, what you're doing is you're creating, and again, I blame a lot of this on these debate shows, but you're creating a generation of ignorant fans. And I'm saying that with the utmost respect, because I don't necessarily blame a casual fan for, basing their opinion off what the national media says. Like, I don't expect everyone to, like, look, when the Deflategate stuff came out, going back in time a little bit here, when all that stuff came out, I don't expect a Steelers fan to go through the Deflategate report. I don't expect a Dolphins fan to go through it. But guess what? I did. I tore that thing apart because I was invested in it. So I understand if people are like, oh, this, that, and the other, but don't sit there and tell me, these things and have me, explain it to you, having read the report, having dived into it, and dismiss me because I'm a Patriots fan. Do I have, but look, I mean, I sit here and I'll try to be as unbiased as possible. I don't think anyone's completely objective, and we see that all the time. No one is completely objective, but there's obviously there's different types of investment. So a casual fan is going to watch their team, and they're a Chiefs fan, and they just watch the Chiefs play. They're going to turn on First Things First and listen to Nick Wright, put them in the dynasty tier, which is so idiotic, but that's not what we're talking about. But they're going to sit there and see him do that, and then be like, oh yeah, I mean, this Chiefs, I mean, I think someone wrote a column talking about how, the Chiefs' 4 straight AFC Championship game appearances were akin to the Patriots going to 4 Super Bowls and winning 3 of them in 5 years. And I'm like, no, stop, pump the effing brakes.
No, that's not even close.
Yeah, exactly. But that's where we're getting at right now. So what's going to happen in 10 years? I mean, you're basically going to have nothing prior to like 2008 be discussed, because everything prior to that, they're like, oh, Peyton Manning, there's no way he's better than Patrick Mahomes. Look at his first 70 career games. Well, again, there's a massive difference between 1998 and 2018. Same thing with 2001 and 2018. Hell, there's a massive difference from 2010 to 2018, just based on the rule changes, some of the things that have happened in that time. So, yes, what I say when people say, oh, Patrick Mahomes is doing what no one has ever done before, technically throwing more yards in those games, sure. But the reality of it is we see this every cycle of quarterbacks. You're going to have a guy who's going to outpace the previous group of quarterbacks because, well, quite frankly, that's where the offense is going. So, yes, of course, Patrick Mahomes is going to have more yards in his first 5 seasons as a starter than Peyton Manning. You know why? Because the offense is far more favored in this day and age than it was in 1998. And if you can't accept that, then I can't really take your opinion seriously, because that's not being objective. That's turning a blind eye to context to prove your point. And that's my biggest thing.
And Peyton Manning came about, right? Let's say he really became Peyton Manning in the early 2000s. Who did he have to go through to get to a Super Bowl? The Patriots defense or the Steelers defense? Yeah. 2 elite defenses. Oh, and by the way, the Baltimore Ravens were pretty good too during that time. Patrick Mahomes, as great as he is, to get the 2 Super Bowls, he beat
the Browns,
the Tennessee Titans. Yeah, the Titans one year in the AFC Championship game, the Bills the following year in the AFC Championship game, and then he lost to Joe Burrow and the Cincinnati Bengals in a game that they were up, by 3 scores and weren't able to seal the deal. So yeah, I mean it's frustrating without question. I mean, even recently, in the last couple of days, a guy who I think deserves some Hall of Fame consideration is John Adel, who people are going to say, who the hell is that? But I mean, he was a quarterback in the 60s and 70s who was 6-7-time Pro Bowler, All-Pro quarterback, MVP. But I think when he retired, he was like 3rd or 4th in yards passing, and people are going to just look at his stats and go, "Oh, Patrick Mahomes has already surpassed him." Yeah, the game was completely different back then than it is now. Look, Luka Doncic is probably going to at some point surpass LeBron James as the all-time leading scorer. Let's say LeBron gets to 40,000 points in his career. Luka's already at 8,000 and he's 23 years old. But does that make him a better player? No, it doesn't. It's a different sport now. People are hucking up 10 threes a game, and the average score in the NBA this year is like 115 per team. So it's a different sport.
And it's like it's funny because, like, again, they'll focus on the starts of Mahomes, or obviously Mahomes, but starts of his versus Brady and whatnot. But it's like, again, prior to this year, Brady was outpacing him statistically now. So how I see that is like, you're going to sit there and tell me that Patrick Mahomes will be at the same level he's at now at age 45? Probably not. I'm not gonna bet on that. Like, that's an absurd assumption to make at this point. That's how big, that's how wide of a gap there is right now. So to me, it's like you're sitting here talking about, oh, this guy is the greatest ever, and it's like, he hasn't even been better than a 45-year-old. You know what I mean? He's quote unquote chasing. So how can you logically say he's on pace for anything right now other than just being one of the best of the younger quarterbacks, which we both agree with right now, certainly. But what's going to happen in a couple of years, say if, again, we mentioned Tua. What happens if they go out and win a Super Bowl this year? And next year, Tua goes out and has another huge season, puts up a bunch of numbers. All of a sudden, what's the difference between him and Patrick Mahomes?
Yeah, and he's got a 39-year-old coach who's going to be there for a while, and Mahomes has a 65-year-old coach who, and look, I think Andy Reid's still got his fastball, no question about it, but how long is he going to continue to coach? What happens when he leaves? Does the program remain intact? So there's a lot of factors that go into this. Quarterbacks also have to be judged in what they have to overcome, not just on the field, but off the field, the quality of the ownership, the general manager, how much money is spent in the organization. Will they go get you players? How stable is the coaching staff? All of that stuff. And Mahomes is in a great situation, a tremendous situation. He's taking advantage of it, and good for him. But, like you bring up Matt Stafford, who went to like the most dysfunctional franchise in the NFL and was stuck there for 12 or 13 years. it's tough to compare those two types of players.
Well, and like I said, I mean, and in no way do I believe Matt Stafford is a better quarterback than Patrick
No.
Mahomes. But he, like I said before, he was the guy that was, the fastest to X amount of yards or the most touchdowns in X amount of games. And is it impressive? Absolutely. No one's saying that it's not impressive, but it's all relative. It's relative to the era of football that they're playing in. Well, yes, of course, you're going to gain more yards because it's a lot easier to play offense in this league. It's not as physical on defense. I mean, hell, go back 15, 20 years, you're not going to find a single guy that's going to go running in the middle of the field carelessly like we do every single week from just about every receiver that plays the position. It just doesn't happen anymore. You know why? Well, because you don't have Brian Dawkins ready to take your head off. In the middle of the field.
Right.
Like, and that's what it used to be. So it's like, yeah, of course the game's going to be more open, and it's a good thing. Like, it's a good thing. I'm fine with it. I'm okay with the offenses, getting favoritism. I'm not necessarily a fan of the 50 to 45 games, but I'm still enjoying the offense. I like that, but I also enjoy very good defense. It's just the problem is now we're just getting to the point where the context and is just so lost on so many people. And it's like, the more and more we get further away from that old style of football, that I think the less people are ever going to appreciate some of these older guys that have come and gone. And again, it's a shame. It's too bad because, you would think the national coverage of the sport would kind of try to preserve that, but I just don't feel like that's the motivation. It's more, like I said, this day and age, it's about reaction. It's about being loud, not about being right. I mean, who cares if you're right? It's just about being loud and creating, a social media clip that can go viral.
I've worked in politics, political talk radio, for a half a decade. I was on the other side of the aisle because most political talk radio is to the right. I was to the left, but being wrong and strong in that medium is better than being right and weak. And that's exactly what it is. Just yell it out loud. You could be 100% wrong, but it seems like you're right. People will believe you. And that's kind of crept into sports. It's crept into everything in society.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And like I said, I feel like in the long run, it's going to, sadly, going to kind of cheapen how we view these things. But that's why I'm here, John. I'm fighting the good fight. That's what I'm trying.
You are.
I'm trying.
Yeah.
I just don't know if anyone's listening. That's the problem.
I hope so.
I am.
I
hope so. I know you are. Again, John, you are contractually obligated to
That's true.
Listen
That's
to
true.
me, agree with me, and pretend like I do no wrong. So that's that's going to do it for us here today. We've gone well past the time I expected, but we get into a good conversation. Can't stop. But we will be back tomorrow, obviously, to kind of really preview week 13 here in the NFL. Got some good games. Obviously, I'm hoping the Patriots win tonight. I don't know if I'm going to pick them. It's I'm going to go with my heart or my head. Sometimes get that a little confused, but I think it'll be an entertaining game at least tonight, and hopefully if you're a Patriots fan, hopefully you'll be rooting for cheering on a win. So, but until then, we will be back tomorrow to break down and give our picks for the rest of the weekend, and of course talk about Aaron Rodgers getting back out on the field because he looks like he's going to play this week. So thank you everyone for tuning in, and we will talk to you soon.